Along the wild Atlantic coast of what is now North Carolina, a small group of English settlers arrived with a dream. They believed they were about to build the future. A new home, a new life, a new English colony in the New World. There were 115 men, women, and children living together on a small island called Roanoke. But just 3 years later, every single one of them would vanish. No bodies, no signs of violence, no clear explanation, just one mysterious word carved into a tree. To this day, more than 4 centuries later, historians still ask the same haunting question: what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? And how did 115 people disappear without a trace? The story begins in the late 1500s. England was eager to establish colonies in North America. Spain already controlled much of the New World, and England wanted its own foothold. So a group of English settlers was sent across the Atlantic to build a permanent colony. Their leader was a man named John White, an artist and explorer. In 1587, White and the settlers landed on Roanoke Island, located along the coast of present-day North Carolina. The location seemed promising. The land was fertile, the forests were full of resources, and the surrounding waters were rich with fish. But survival in the New World was never easy. The settlers faced food shortages, unfamiliar weather, and tensions with nearby Native American tribes. Despite the hardships, life continued. Homes were built, families tried to settle into daily routines. And something remarkable happened during those early days of the colony. A baby was born. Her name was Virginia Dare. She became the first English child born in the Americas. For the settlers, Virginia Dare symbolized hope, a new generation, a new beginning. But that hope would soon be tested. As weeks passed, it became clear that the colony desperately needed supplies. Food was running low. Tools and equipment were scarce. Without help from England, the colony might not survive. So the settlers asked Governor John White to return to England and bring back supplies. White didn't want to leave his family behind. His daughter and his newborn granddaughter, Virginia Dare, were both living in the colony. But the settlers insisted. The colony needed help, and White was the only person who could organize the supply mission. Reluctantly, he agreed. In late 1587, John White sailed back to England, promising the settlers he would return as soon as possible. But history had other plans. Soon after White reached England, war broke out between England and Spain. The conflict would become one of the most famous naval battles in history, the war against the Spanish Armada. Because of the war, almost every English ship was needed for military defense. Civilian voyages were postponed, supply missions were delayed, and John White was unable to return to Roanoke. Weeks turned into months, months turned into years. 3 long years passed before White finally secured a ship that could take him back across the Atlantic. It was 1590 when he finally returned to Roanoke Island. White had spent 3 years worrying about the fate of the colony. He feared the worst, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to see. When White and his crew arrived at Roanoke Island, the settlement looked strangely quiet. No smoke rose from cooking fires. No voices echoed through the village. As they explored the colony, a chilling realization set in. The entire settlement had been abandoned. The houses were empty. The buildings were still standing, but the people were gone. There were no signs of battle, no burned structures, no bodies. It was as if the entire population had simply disappeared. But then they noticed something strange. Carved into a wooden post was a single word. Nearby, carved into a tree, John White immediately recognized the word. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, and the home of a Native American tribe that had friendly relations with the settlers. White had previously agreed with the colonists on a simple system. If the settlers ever had to leave Roanoke, they would carve the name of their destination somewhere visible, and if they were forced to leave under danger or attack, they would carve a cross above the message. But there was no cross. Croatoan, only the word. This clue led White to believe that the settlers had relocated to Croatoan Island. Perhaps they had joined the Native American tribe there. Perhaps they had moved in order to survive. White wanted to sail to Croatoan immediately to search for them. But nature had other plans. A violent storm began to form along the coast. The crew feared the ship would be destroyed if they continued. Reluctantly, they turned back, and John White never returned to Roanoke again. The fate of the colony remained unknown. Over the centuries, historians and researchers have proposed many theories about what happened. One theory suggests the settlers integrated with Native American tribes. Some historical accounts describe later tribes that appeared to have European features or used English-style tools. Another theory suggests famine may have forced the colonists to scatter into smaller groups in search of food. But despite hundreds of years of research, no single explanation has ever been proven. Archaeologists have searched Roanoke Island and nearby areas for clues, fragments of tools, pieces of pottery, old metal artifacts. These discoveries hint that the settlers may have moved inland. But none of the evidence tells the full story. The fate of the 115 colonists remains one of America's oldest unsolved mysteries. Today, Roanoke Island is quiet. Tourists visit the area, walking through reconstructed parts of the old settlement. They read plaques describing the vanished colony. They see replicas of the houses that once stood there. And they stand beneath trees similar to the one where that strange word was carved. Croatoan. 400 years have passed. Generations of historians have searched for answers. But the truth may never be fully known. Sometimes history leaves behind ruins. Sometimes history leaves behind nothing but a mystery. The Lost Colony of Roanoke reminds us that even in recorded history, entire communities can disappear. Lives, families, children, gone without a trace. And somewhere in the shadows of the past, the story of those 115 settlers still waits to be discovered. Or perhaps it will remain one of history's greatest mysteries forever.